sand ended and there was earth. He felt around. He found grass stems. The box, then, rested on top of the ground, which was perfectly natural for a compost pit shell not yet placed where it would finally belong. The sand— he explored further. He waited. The other three stayed quiet. The faint brightness around the cover hole faded away. The interior of the tank-like box became abysmally black. "Can anybody guess the time?" he asked, after eons seemed to have passed. "It feels like next Thursday," said the voice of the mustached man. "But it's probably 10 or 11 o'clock. Looks like we're just going to be left here till they get around to us." "I think we'd better not wait," said Lockley. "We've been pretty quiet. They probably think we're well-behaved specimens of this planet's wildlife. They won't expect us to try anything this late. Suppose we get out." "How?" demanded the chunky man. Lockley said carefully, "This box is resting on top of the ground. I've dug down through the sand and found the bottom edge of the metal sidewall. If it's resting only on dirt, not stone, we ought to be able to dig out with our hands. I'll start now. You listen." He began to dig with his hands, first clearing away the sand for a reasonable space. He felt a certain sardonic interest in what might happen. He strongly suspected that nothing undesirable would take place. It was at least quaint that aliens from outer space should accept a bottomless metal shell as a suitable prison for animals. It was quaint that they put in a sandy floor. How would they know that such a thing meant a cage on Earth? Of course, the whole event might have been a test of animal intelligence. Almost any animal would have tried to burrow out. Lockley dug. The earth was hard, and its upper part was filled with tenacious grass roots. Lockley pulled them away. Once he'd gotten under them, the digging went faster. Presently he was under the metal side wall. He dug upward. His hand reached open air. "One of you can spell me now," he reported in a low tone. "It looks like we'll get away, but we've got to make our plans first. We don't want to be talking outside the tank, or even when the hole's fair-sized. For instance, will we want to keep together when we get outside?" "Nix," said the chunky man. "We want to tell everybody about these characters. We scatter. If they catch one, they don't catch any more. We couldn't fight any better for being together. We better scatter. I call that settled. I'm scatterin'." He crawled to Lockley in the darkness. "Where you diggin'? Okay, I got it. Move aside and give me room." "Everybody agrees on that?" asked Lockley. They did. Lockley was relieved. The chunky man dug busily. There was only the sound of breathing and the occasional fall of thrown-out earth against the metal of the thing that confined them. The chunky man said briskly, "This dirt digs all right. We just got to make the hole bigger." In a little while the chunky man stopped, panting. The tall man said, "I'll take a shot at it." There was a breakthrough to the air outside. The atmosphere in the tank improved. The smell of fresh dug dirt and cool night air was refreshing. The mustached man took his turn at digging. Lockley went at it again. Soon he whispered, "I think it's okay. I'll go ahead. No talking outside." He shook hands all around, whispered, "Good luck," and squirmed through the opening to the night. Innumerable stars glittered in the sky. They were reflected on the water of the lake, here very close. Lockley moved silently. In the blackness, just behind him, his eyes had become adjusted to almost complete darkness. He headed away from the shining water. He got brushwood between himself and his former companions. He stood very, very still. He heard them murmuring together. They were outside, but they had proposed entirely separate efforts at escape. He went on, relieved. It happened that the next time he'd see them, circumstances would be entirely different. But he believed they were competent men. Guided by the Big Dipper, he moved directly toward the place where Jill should be waiting for him. By the angle of the Dipper's handle, he knew that it was almost midnight. Jill would surely have known that nearly the worst had happened. He'd have to find her. It was 2 o'clock when he reached the place where Jill had intended to wait. He showed himself openly. He called quietly. There was no answer. He called again and again. He saw something white. It was a scrap of paper speared on a brushwood branch which had been stripped of leaves to make the paper show clearly. Lockley retrieved it and saw markings on it which the starlight could not help him to read. He went deep into the woods, found a hollow, and bent low, risking the light of his cigarette lighter for a swift look at the message. "I saw creatures moving around in the camp. They weren't men. I was afraid they might be hunting me. I've gone to wait by the car if I can find it." She'd written in English, in full confidence that creatures from space would not be able to read it. Lockley was not so sure, but the message hadn't been removed. If it had been read, there'd have been an ambush waiting for him when he found it. So it appeared. He headed through the night toward the ditched small car. It seemed a very long way, though he did stop and drink his fill from a little mountain stream, over which a highway bridge had almost been completed. In the night, though, and with hard going, it was not easy to estimate how far he'd gone. In fact, he was anxiously debating if he mightn't have passed the abandoned bulldozer when he had come upon the place where blasting had been going on. Still, it was a very long way to be negotiated over still remaining tree stumps and the unfilled holes from which others had been pulled. He reached the bulldozer and turned south, and at long last reached the highway. His car should be no more than a quarter-mile away. He moved toward it, close to the road's edge. He heard music. It was faint, but vivid, because it was the last sound that anybody would expect to hear in the hours before dawn in a wilderness deserted by mankind. He scraped his foot on the roadway. The music stopped instantly. He said, "Jill?" He heard her gasp. "I found where Vale had been," he said steadily. "There was no blood there. There's no sign that he's been killed. Then I was caught myself. I was put with 3 other men who were believed killed, but who are still alive. We escaped. It is within reason to hope that Vale is unharmed, and that he may escape, or somehow be rescued." What he said was partly to make sure that it was he who appeared in the darkness. But it was technically true, too. It was within reason to hope for Vale's ultimate safety. One can always hope, whatever the odds against the thing hoped for. But Lockley thought that the odds against Vale's living through the events now in progress were very great indeed. Jill stepped out into the starlight. "I wasn't sure it was you," she said with difficulty. "I saw the things, you know, at a distance. At first I thought they were men, so when I first saw you, dimly, I was afraid." "I'm sorry I haven't better news," said Lockley. "It's good news. It's very good news," she insisted as he drew near. "If they've captured him, he'll make them understand that he's a man, and that men are intelligent, and not just animals, and that they should be our friends, and we theirs." The girl's voice was resolute. Lockley could imagine that all the time she'd been waiting, she'd been preparing to deny that even the worst news was final, until she looked on Vale's dead body itself. "Do you want to tell me exactly what you found out?" she asked. "I'll tell you while I work on the car," said Lockley. "We want to get moving away from here before daybreak." He went down to the little car, wedged in the saplings it had splintered and broken. He began to clear it so he could lever it back onto the highway. He used a broken sapling, and as he worked, he told what had happened, including the 3 men in the compost pit shell, and the dumping of assorted small wildlife specimens into it with them. "But they didn't kill you," said Jill insistently. "And they didn't kill those 3. And there were the 2 others you say got over the paralysis and went back to the